Palace or at Windsor Castle or something. There's a report there somewhere in someone's desk that is dynamite.
Yeah, I think we're always going to see a rivalry between these two women. It's always good copy.
It has been a huge media moment for her. It's drawn a huge amount of attention, which you might argue the week before her show launch is only a good thing.
Hi, I'm Matt Wilkinson, The Sun's Royal Editor. Welcome to Royal Exclusive. With me in the studio is Royal Editor at Hello Magazine, Emily Nash, and Royal Journalist and author, Robert Jobson. This interview that Jason Knorf gave in Australia on their 60 Minutes show is interesting timing and there's interesting comments as well, Rob. So Jason Knorf, you probably both rubbed shoulders with him when he was working with the royal family, but he's a very well-known character in the royal household who's close to both William and Harry. What do we make, Rob, of this interview? I mean, I say interesting timing, but also interesting comments that he gave. Yeah,
he gave some interesting comments, and none that really sort of jumped out, startled me. I mean, because the story's been around. It was the fact that it was coming from him personally. I thought the timing was odd. I thought the actual fact that it was in Australia was strange. Of course, he worked in New Zealand for a while for the Prime Minister there. It just strikes me as he must have sought some sort of clearance to do what he did. And if he did so, the main person he worked for was the Prince of Wales, Prince William, and the Princess of Wales. So he must, I would have thought, have had some sort of clearance, because not only did he talk about the whole issue on Meghan, but he talked about things that are personal to William. He talked about how William would react over the cancer diagnosis with his wife, Catherine. So I would have found it very, very odd if he hadn't. I mean, he has been with his partner, who's I think he's an ambassador, diplomat in India. I think there was. So I find it a bit of a strange timing. I mean, he wasn't particularly revelatory, I didn't think. I felt that I knew the stuff. It's just that it came from him.
Well, let's have a look at some of the things he said. He was speaking about the cancer, and Jason said it was awful, absolutely awful. It was the lowest I've ever seen him talking about William. But he also spoke about William and Harry's relationship, and he said obviously that he did work with both of them. And he said it's difficult to have this stuff play out in public, but William's chosen to keep his thoughts private. It's hard and sad, especially for all of us who knew both of them. What do you make of those comments, Emily?
It's really interesting to hear him say that publicly, because I'm remembering the night they announced that there was going to be this split, and at the time it appeared to be primarily
after weeks of
rumours, but it was that they announced that they were sort of going to have separate households, and that was a huge moment, and obviously Jason was at the heart of that. So it's really interesting to hear him talking about it. But it is, and from people I've spoken to, it must have been incredibly difficult to be in the middle of that situation where you are working for all the people concerned. But
also, he was the central character in this bullying allegations against Meghan. It was his email that went to Simon Case, which elevated the situation. And I think also, he played a very important role in all that, but we still didn't get to the nub of what actually happened. I mean, we still never got an investigation that we were promised by the palace. If there was an investigation, it was never made public. Again, something the palace said they would be sharing their findings. So he must be quite frustrated in himself, because, he highlighted the case, and we don't really know what actually happened, but we do know that two members of staff made complaints, formal complaints, and left the employment over those claims.
And he does say that he wouldn't have done things differently.
That's correct.
So I thought that was really
he's probably public enemy number one in
this is a really important point. As you point out, Emily, he said he wouldn't change anything, in which I assume encapsulates the whole emails to Simon Case, to raising the issue. You mentioned there, Rob, that we haven't seen the result of this report, because it was now it's been raised again by Jason in this interview. Do you think this now time for the palace to at some stage release this?
Well, I think they should have done, but I don't think they ever will. But they should have done, because at the time, if you remember, all sorts of promises were being made to sort of to clear the way forward, to make sure that the palace was not seen as dated, to make sure it wasn't in any way. It was two-way. It was not just the bullying accusations levelled at the Duchess of Sussex, but also the other way. You know, the way that there was a regime of racism, there was a regime of not being sympathetic to people with mental health issues. So I do think that the whole thing was just shoved under the carpet, and it's quite interesting now that Jason has raised this, and he would withdraw any of it.
He said he wouldn't change anything. I mean, there's a file there at Buckingham Palace or at Windsor Castle or something. There's a report there somewhere in someone's desk that is dynamite. You know, that one day.
Well, yeah. Well, probably because nobody wants it to come out because it'd be rocked too much.
Right, well, here's a phrase I never thought I would utter on Royal Exclusive, but Jar Wars. This is the headline on the front page of The Sun, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we're talking about a possible rivalry between the Princess of Wales and the Duchess of Sussex over jam. This is because, as we know, Meghan is relaunching her new brand and she's bringing out lots of jam. But we're on a job this week in Wales where the Princess of Wales let slip that she has a plum recipe and she was offering it to youngsters for free. Now, I would say, is it a little bit tongue-in-cheek? But Rob, you've written a brilliant book about the Princess of Wales. Has there always been a rivalry between Meghan and Catherine?
That's very kind. Look, I think there probably has always been a rivalry that the media has tried to push hard on. The difference between these jams, I suppose, is one's going to be sold, I take it, from Meghan's, and I think she was just offering a recipe, Catherine, which is just a nice touch. A nice story. It's just lucky the King's not in the mix as well, because he used to have his own jams that he flogged off to Waitrose. But look, I think we're always going to see a rivalry between these two women. It's always good copy, and it gives us a good headline. Do
you think they ever, both of you, I mean, you've seen them operating when they were both working royals. Do you think that they got on? Do you think it's the press that pushed this idea that they were rivals or that they weren't friends?
I think there was a big part of media involvement in sort of pitting them against each other. We even ran a campaign against it at Hello Magazine a few years ago. And we subsequently found out, actually, that a lot of the tension was between the brothers rather than the wives. I'm sure it wasn't, all a bed of roses. But in many ways, the narrative became about the women when actually we weren't aware of what was going on behind the scenes.
And I also think that, it is good copy when you get the two women together, and that was probably what was going on. But I always used to think, why would they get on necessarily? They come from completely
very different characters.
Backgrounds and characters, and I didn't really. I think that when they came up with the Fab Four idea, and it was all based really about one picture that was taken up at Sandringham, and then the whole thing got momentum, and I don't think really they were ever that close, actually. I think that the Palace press office were guilty of trying to make that a big issue. They had pictures of them, didn't they, at Wimbledon together and all these sort of things, but I don't think there was ever a real closeness between them.
No, we kind of had a hope, didn't we, that these two beautiful young couples would become, would create, as we called it, a Fab Four. We hoped that it would all be happy and merry.
But there was certainly a bit of jealousy came in the whole of this. When I think, from my understanding, when Catherine and William invited them over to the newly refurbished Kensington Palace, there was a clear difference in the size of the properties they were living in. And, I think it's only natural. There was a little bit of a question mark saying, well, what's going on here? But maybe if Harry and Meghan had been a little bit more patient, and they would have got what they wanted in the end.
We read quite a lot about it, actually, in Spare. I think Harry wrote about that Meghan was a little bit surprised. I think it was the thing where she said she was just wearing... she wasn't wearing any socks, or that she said that other people weren't much of a hugger. She was dressed down when the Princess of Wales came over. There seemed to be almost a clash of cultures, or clash of backgrounds.
Absolutely,
maybe.
but why should absolutely. I don't know why anyone would necessarily criticise Catherine for not being a hugger. There's a bit of that
And they
over the
both
topness.
also, in the Oprah interview, actually both praised her and said that she'd been fantastic throughout. In fact, she was one of the few people who sort of came out of that unscathed.
Emily, on these rota jobs, so I was in Wales. It was another colleague of ours, actually, that was on this job. And the Princess of Wales mentioned about, you can have the recipe for my jam. Sometimes they leave us a little trail of crumbs to follow, the royals, don't they? They'll say something that they know that the press will pick up and we will report on. Do you think that this was just small talk, or do you think that she was almost like deliberately laying it out there so we would see it and write it?
Matt, I wish I knew the answer to that, because in so many ways it would be the perfect trail of breadcrumbs, wouldn't it? But it's also entirely typical of the kind of thing that she would say on an engagement like this, especially if she's talking to children who are making jam themselves. We know, she famously talked about making the Queen some homemade chutney. For her first Christmas at Sandringham. So we know it's absolutely what she does. Whether or not she mentioned this deliberately is the million-dollar question.
We need to know. We need to try and ask. I mean, it's timing, isn't it? Timing is everything. Because, next week, Meghan's new TV show will air. We know a little bit about it because it was trailed back in January, then delayed because of the Los Angeles fires. I mean, I do buy the idea that it was solely delayed because of the LA fires. I don't think it was delayed for the relaunch and just coming out with that. I think it was genuinely she didn't want to put the show out while the LA fires was going on. But are we looking forward to it? Will it be a success that they need? Because Polo wasn't particularly a very good success. Do you think with Love, Meghan will top the charts? Will it really boost her reputation?
I think people will be interested. Look, I'm not one. I'm sure Emily's not. There's an awful lot of Meghan bashing when it comes to these things, and it seems that everyone wants her to fail. But it would actually be quite a good story if it was a success. But I'm not overly inspired by it. It's not exactly going to be, something I'm going to be wanting to tune into unless it was a professional thing to do. It's just a little dull. But will it be a success? I think a lot of people would tune in out of interest. And what is success for them anymore? I mean, they've had some big numbers with their royal bashing books and their royal bashing documentaries. This is now, they're trying to do something, I suppose, that they tell us is all positive, but it just doesn't seem particularly inspiring to me. I mean, it's just like, an advert for Waitrose or something. I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me.
Emily, Rob was saying, what merits a success? Is it going to be numbers? Is it going to be avoiding controversy? Is it launching herself onto a second series? Or
I think the big question will be numbers and how many people tune in, whether that's from curiosity or genuine interest and admiration, and whether then that's enough to sustain it. Whether people will watch past the first episode, watch the whole series. But as you say, I think this is going to be a very different take on her from everything we've seen, particularly the Netflix show in recent years. And this is, her not so much reinventing herself, but sort of going back to what she was doing before.
But if the numbers are low, really low, then of course it's going to create that negative publicity that she probably doesn't want.
But, let's not forget she had a huge following for the TIG. Yep. Her Instagram account, that did very well for her. And if people who followed her for that are still invested now, then there's potentially quite a big audience for it.
This is a really good point, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. Her Instagram page and this new show does seem a little bit, 2014, 2016. Everything seems to be going back to how she succeeded or how she feels she succeeded on the TIG. Are you like me? Do you think that it feels a bit dated?
I think it's where she feels comfortable. And so if that's where she comes back into the game, then so be it. But it is difficult because I think the world has changed a huge amount since then. We're living through really turbulent times at the moment. And for someone in the public eye to kind of not address some of the big issues, that may prove to be challenging. We did see her, of course, popping up after the fires, and
she got criticised for that. She
can't win whatever she does.
But it's all also about perception, isn't it? And the perception of this woman has changed dramatically since 2016, 2017, and that's partly her fault, partly the way that the media circus creates a story around her.
Okay.
One thing is for certain, though, people are going to just keep talking about it. We're talking about it now. There'll be a lot of discussion about it when it comes out, and perhaps that's enough for her to just keep things ticking over.
Yeah, that's probably it. It's just to consistently keep in the news, or to, you know, keep presenting herself in the manner that she wants to be presented.
And it is in the royal family's interests for them to be successful, you know, for them to settle down and have a, you know, a straightforward business life out there, really.
Well, I'm sure we're all thrilled and we can't wait till when it actually lands. I mean, we're all going to have to watch it, aren't we? We're going to have to sit down and watch it.
Sadly.
Right. What was good, though, I really genuinely had a great time in Wales with William and Catherine. And the thought that came into my head when I saw them, I was there when they were making Welsh cakes. We've brought some Welsh cakes back from Pontypridd for everyone to enjoy. And what I did see was a very comfortable, happy Catherine. It felt like the cancer scare, the cancer diagnosis, the treatment and her video seemed a long way in the past. Do you share my view that it feels like she's properly back now, that she's back on her feet and everything is going well, and it feels like that was, you know, consigned to history now?
I think that may be true, but I don't honestly believe we're going to see as many engagements as we saw in the past. I think they're going to be watching her health very carefully, but equally, but there's not going to be the numbers. So they're going to be bigger. That was quite a big event. There were a number of jobs in different areas they went to with them together. I think that they will do far less. And part of that, I think, is because there's an awareness of the King still being on chemotherapy, and that, you know, that for them, whatever happens in the future and whenever things change, it's a long road ahead, and so they have to pace themselves in. You know, for them, it's only ever going to get busier. They're going to one day be the King and Queen, and that is, you know, then they're completely public property. So I think there's a sense of trying to, whilst they still have their young family, to have a semblance that can have that connection with that young family.
Emily, did you feel like they were back?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've been told throughout that this is still a sort of phased return to royal duties and a gradual thing. And yet I feel like we've seen quite a lot of her, and she does seem to be on really good form. I've seen her in person a few times. She's so engaged. She does seem really comfortable. And she's actually being a bit more direct and talking a bit more about issues than we've heard from her perhaps before. Whether, I don't know, her experience has made her a bit bolder in speaking out, that may be one thing. But I also agree with your point, Rob, that they do need to pace themselves. And if you think about the late Queen, you know, she had that period of living in Malta, didn't she, and having that relatively normal family time, which is, I'm sure, what William and Kate are really focused on at the moment.
Yeah, and also the children are still relatively young. They're going through very important stages of their education. And I think it's all about expectations in the media too. We've got to learn probably to be a bit more patient and to expect less big moments and just to sort of pace ourselves. I mean, I think that is only fair for them as a couple, because as you say, you know, the Queen had a very small window that time when she was in Malta. At least they're getting a little bit of time. But I do feel, you know, there's less people backing the King up as well. That's the other thing. I mean, I was at an engagement the other day at the Palace. I mean, he was, you know, I don't know how he does it really. There was like 400 or 500 people in this one room, and he's working the room. And the Queen was in a separate room with about 80 people in, and left a bit earlier, and that's no criticism of her. But I thought he's just ploughing into the work, you know.
They're kind of different engagements last couple of months or last couple of weeks of William and Catherine and King and Queen. They do different things. Like William and Catherine's, you know, seem to be a little bit more interactive, not gimmicky, but, you know, making cakes and having fun and going to communities. But a lot of the Kings have been in palaces.
A lot of receptions. Yeah. A lot of receptions where I think he's trying to get as many people in those rooms as possible to interact. But, you know, and there is a political role for royalty too. You know, there's a lot of ministers in there. It's actually quite interesting the way he's going about it, I think.
Although there was a big cook-off yesterday, wasn't there? Because the King and Queen were dishing up dates and biryani for Ramadan, and they were doing the whole Welsh cake thing. So I didn't know which kitchen to look at.
It made me very hungry that day.
I'm feeling peckish now.
Did you get a sandwich on
I got some Welsh cakes. Okay. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've got on your phone, but sometimes on my iPhone it pops up memories from like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or a year ago. And just the other day, We're talking about Catherine, Princess of Wales, and everything that she's doing. A video popped on my phone that was recorded 3 years ago. It was in Denmark. We were in Copenhagen, and she went to the Lego Foundation Play Lab. I just want to, if we can play the video. So she's at the top of this slide. And not only does she emerge happy and smiling, I think she's got heels on, right? And walks around her feet in front of all the watching media. Now, that reminded me of my favourite ever Princess of Wales moment. And I was wondering if now's the time where I feel that she's come back. What do you think is your favourite ever Princess of Wales moment?
I mean, there's so many. That quite a few. One that just leapt out to me then, seeing that again, is her sort of dissolving in laughter. Was on the Isle of Wight a few years ago after the first King's Cup regatta, and she was up in the clubhouse with Princess Charlotte, and they were coming down a stairwell. I think she pointed out her father in the crowd, Michael Middleton, and Charlotte immediately started pulling faces and sticking her tongue out. And there was just this brilliant moment from her mother of looking like slightly appalled, knowing that there were loads of cameras on this situation, but then also she just couldn't help laughing, and it was relatable to me as a mum, but also just really funny. She's obviously got a really good sense of humour.
I obviously like the classic moments when you're commentating on telly and things like the kiss on the balcony for the wedding. But I think for me it's Louis when he was playing up and gave the, was doing all this sort of stuff to his mother and then being passed along to the king. I just thought that sort of humanised the whole situation when you've got these, with George and Charlotte always thought these perfect children, and he got Louis, who decided that he was going to give them a hard time, and I thought it was great that he was passed along to his grandfather.
And every parent is watching that going, doesn't matter if you're a princess.
Exactly, you are one of us.
And she just looked like, and she just, she looked, I can't deal with this now. It's not, and knowing that the difference being everybody's got their cameras, all the world are watching,
And also any element of her being competitive with William, that's always really good value, because they do tend to, get quite spirited, don't they?
The one thing we aren't allowed to talk about at the moment, or we're apparently not allowed to ask about, is what the Princess of Wales is wearing on certain engagements. However, there have been some headlines this week regarding the Duchess of Sussex. I want to get your thoughts on this. So she was pictured wearing, or actually she posted a picture on Instagram of herself wearing a Northwestern University jumper. So there were accusations of almost cosplay, whether she was dressing up or wearing clothes that were connected to Princess Diana, because in the 90s, Princess Diana was wearing the same... Were you there?
Yeah.
She was wearing the same jumper. Yeah. And what do you think of these accusations? Is it real?
I mean, I can't imagine she's studying to that extent, but I mean, I think that's more like probably a features department have found the two pictures and put it together. But no, I mean, one thing I would say about Meghan is she always looks terrific. I think in everything she wears, and she's really together, and I think that she looks good, and nobody can really criticise her for that. And I don't think she's really out to try to emulate Diana. I mean, otherwise there were some pretty extraordinary fashions back then, I can assure you. So I think you look pretty strange wearing some of the things that Diana wore with the shoulder pads, which you could barely get through a door.
Well, Rob mentioned, you mentioned there about, it's a featurey type thing. A lot of picture editors have gone through after this Northwestern University photo and said, oh, well, she's worn similar dresses on this day to Diana. There's a Versace dress, there's a Catherine Walker dress, there's all these kind of items where they have worn. But what do you think about this, Emily? Because Meghan, to give her credit, she did go to Northwestern University.
She did, so she has a very strong right to wear that sweatshirt.
Probably more
so than any of us. Yeah, exactly.
More than Diana, who didn't go to university.
Yeah, look, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it has been a huge media moment for her. It's drawn a huge amount of attention, which you might argue the week before her show launch is only a good thing.
You cynic.
But I don't think it's that clear cut. I think, she, as I say, she's an alumna of Northwestern. She might literally just be proud to wear their sweater.
Yeah, that's right.
I suppose there's only a certain amount of clothes out there for women to wear when they're pictured every day or every couple of weeks or stuff.
I've always thought this, even back in the day when I remember Princess Diana having go at me because we used, when she'd get off the plane in Angola.
You're wearing the same dress every time.
We would say to her, what jeans are these? Are they, Armani jeans? And she'd say, I'm not a clothes horse. And it was more, it wasn't with the press office, it was with her. She was quite furious about it. But then of course we just wrote exactly what she was wearing. But the point of it is, it does strike me that nobody has a go at William when he's wearing the same jacket. The reality is they can't have that many clothes that they've got to wear. It'd be a vast wardrobe that they've got to wear. If they've got to change clothes every time they go to a job, it does seem... I know that's not exactly what you want to hear in Hello Magazine.
No, well, look, we had a lot of fun with the fact that the Princess was wearing a jacket yesterday that she first wore 18 years ago, I believe, when she was first dating, or I think just had broken up with Prince William. So, she's definitely following the King's ideals of sustainability, re-wearing, recycling.
But it's great after 18 years, you can still fit in a jacket that you wore 18 years ago for a start.
You haven't got at me then, Matt.
No, I'm coming to myself. But it's this idea, and it's got a bit of a role this week that Meghan is somehow, somehow styling herself on Princess Diana and maybe manipulating Harry. I don't particularly buy it, but I was just wondering if my two experts think that this has any legs, that she's been doing this.
And the more it's written, the more she probably would think, oh, this is not a bad idea. I'm getting good media publicity with it. But I can't imagine that she's that desperate that she's going to be doing that.
I don't think so. And I think also, it's fair to say that comparisons have been drawn between some of the things that Catherine wears and the late Princess of Wales as well, because sometimes style emulates something from 30 years ago, whether it's deliberate or not.
But I mean, Diana was such a fashion icon as well. She was when there was very little social media, she was on the covers of all the magazines, and it was part of the whole image, and something that she didn't like actually towards the end. But that's why I think we always sort of hark back to those days probably because of the amount of copies that it shifted, I would think, to be cynical.
And Diana set the standard for fashion anyway.
She really did.
So, you could only end up copying her.
She changed the way people would dress. I mean, but that said, you only have to look at back through time, and Princess Margaret was seen as a fashion icon, her Queen Elizabeth herself was seen as a fashion icon in a different way. So, yeah, it's just the way it is. But I think Diana in particular was always in the news for what she was wearing, and always looked pretty terrific, I think.
OK, let's move on to another thing that could be dynamite, and this is speculation around Donald Trump. But we never really know with Donald Trump, and I think that's half the point. You never really know with Donald Trump. We've experienced that when he was president for 4 years before. But there is this idea that the King and Keir Starmer, or mainly the King, could invite Donald Trump to Balmoral. Now, Balmoral is the King's personal home. It's a beautiful place up in the Scottish Highlands. Donald Trump has family from Scotland. He loves Scotland. He loves golf. Guys, do you think this could happen, and would it be a good idea?
I mean, I think it would be impossible for him to turn that one down, wouldn't it? It would be such a special privilege, I think, afforded to him. You can see him jumping for it, can't you?
Well, his mother was Scottish. She's a MacLeod. So, yeah, I would think he'll absolutely jump at that opportunity, should it be given. I mean, I'm sure the King this time round, after being given all sorts of Trump assurances when they last met, and they got on quite well when they were discussing the global situation and the environment, and but maybe he won't be so easily fobbed off this time, because it does seem that as president he's sort of reneged on a lot of the things he said he was going to do.
What speculation, but what do you think Trump and the King would do together at Balmoral? I mean, there's lots of walks there, but I mean, I know Donald Trump likes to play golf. There's golf courses in Scotland, but
perhaps Andrew can.
Well, bear with me. This is the direction I'm going in. All right. So surely Prince
Andrew back. Back,
Prince Andrew likes golf. Donald Trump likes golf. Bear with me on this. Prince Andrew knew Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, could Prince Andrew actually be the secret weapon for the royal family? With
straightforward shooting weekend.
Could Prince Andrew bring Trump down with himself? That would be what it is. No, I think he'll be kept a long way away from that, and that they'll probably just have if it happens, I think it'd be a great opportunity. I do think that William will play a role as well, because clearly he is trying to build a rapport with the president, and they, seemed to get on very well, didn't they? In that situation in Paris, when they had that meeting at the embassy. So, but the King and Donald Trump got on quite well the last time he was here, and I'm sure that Mr. Sir Keir needs all the help he can get.
What do you think Donald Trump... Sorry, what do you think?
I was just going to say, the King's had a lifetime of this, hasn't he? He is really now a sort of master diplomat. So
absolutely.
He'll be able to manage, this in the best way he knows. And by laying open one of his personal homes, something that's so steeped in particularly his mother's history, Trump in particular had this huge admiration for the late Queen. I think that's, that could be really helpful to our special relationship. And there's a huge law for them to land Marine One on if they need to.
It is interesting, though, that the King... they brought the Queen in last time to sort of help that whole relationship. And this time again, I think he does have respect for the British royal family. Probably at this moment in time, it's really necessary for the special relationship.
You mentioned there that Donald Trump did have a very good fondness, or had a huge fondness for the late Queen Elizabeth II. We've heard this week that 5 architects or 5 groups have been selected to build the permanent memorial that's going to be in St James's Park. I'm quite excited about this in many ways, but what about you guys? What would you want this permanent memorial for the late Queen to look like?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think less domineering than the Queen Victoria Memorial.
That's the huge one outside Buckingham Palace on the east wing,
you can't
isn't
miss
it? You can't miss it.
Yeah, right at the top of the mall. But it's hard, isn't it? Because how do you encapsulate the sort of 7 decades of her reign and sum her up? I'm glad they've got a lot of experts in instead of us, Roberta.
But does it have to be a statue, though? Because what era would you do of a statue? Would you do a young queen? Would you do the old queen, a middle-aged queen? I mean, she's many...
A great big Paddington bear, I think that would be quite fun. but I think that it would be probably towards the end of the reign, that type of thing. But, it might even be a statue. It may even be a waterfall. It may be something moving, And I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea because, we'll never see her like again. I mean, she reigned 70 years, is remarkable. And I don't know, I think that she achieved so much, it's hard to just to sum it up in one, one memorial, isn't it? And she was ever present, really, it seems to me. But something that would give us a sense of her longevity and the length of that reign and what it spanned would be...
I think it would have to be her towards the end of the reign, almost as a sort of grandmother of the nation,
I think so.
because that is how most of us will remember her now. I think that would be fitting.
All right, I'll have to wait and see. Right, we've just got time for our quick-fire questions, OK? So here we go. Take a deep breath. We've talked a lot about food on this week's show. So who is the best cook in the royal family?
Oh, I think it's between the Queen and the future Queen. I'm not putting any of the men down here, but we know Queen Camilla cooks a mean Sunday roast, and we know that Catherine is making plum jam, as well as pasta and all of these other things. And they both seem to enjoy being in the kitchen at home. That's not to cast aspersions on the King or Prince William, who's made a few jokes at his own expense.
Prince William,
stick up for the men.
Prince William's spaghetti bolognese apparently was the best. So when he was...
Really? Is that
That's how he helped to woo Catherine with his spaghetti bolognese.
Well, I didn't know that.
Apparently.
Oh, wow. OK.
She didn't like it that much, but at least he tried.
She married him. We've just spoken about the Queen Elizabeth II memorial, but what is the best royal family permanent memorial?
I would say, through history.
Yeah, or current, whatever you've seen. Yeah.
I would think that really, to me, it's the Albert Hall and the Prince Albert Memorial.
But for sheer, you cannot miss it, I'd say the QVM, because it's right there, in front of the palace. No one's going to get a better spot than that, are they?
No.
Yeah, she's got the best one there.
Yeah, she has. No one else is getting near.
Who is the best and who is the worst dressed royal?
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's mean. I mean, they all dress
The King's the best dressed, I'd say.
I think he's a snappy dresser.
He is, and also the whole sustainable fashion, I would say, has come from him and has spread down through the family.
But I don't know if
I've got a bit
I'd
of
say Prince Edward
fan as well.
Prince Edward, probably because he seems to wear clothes that are far too big for him lately because he's lost a lot of weight. I don't know. I'd say that the King is the best dresser. And none of them are really badly dressed, are they? I mean,
No.
they can't do when they've,
I don't think
when they've got their
really
valets and everyone
criticise
helping
any
them
of
out.
OK, we'll give everyone a free pass on the badly worst dressed one. After Queen Camilla met Gladiator Nitro at Buckingham Palace, what is the most bizarre royal meeting you have seen?
I really enjoyed watching the Queen meet Gemma Collins at Clarence House a couple of years ago. That was a very entertaining exchange. They got on like a house on fire, but they're just two people you wouldn't have expected to have such an in-depth conversation as they did.
Oh, did you see that then?
I was there in person.
Oh, yeah,
it was good
yeah.
fun. And to her credit, Gemma was brilliant. She talked a lot about it afterwards. She was really excited.
Oh, well, I think